You know, it doesn't matter if you work at a massive corporation or a tiny startup. Every single business, deep down, is just a system. And what makes that system work or completely fall apart really comes down to solving a few core challenges. We're going to call them the 4 fundamental puzzles of business, and trust me, once you see them, you'll start seeing them everywhere.
I want you to think for a second about the best boss you've ever had. Got one? Okay, what made them so great? Now, think about the worst. That feeling, that difference right there, that's not just random. It gets right to the heart of the very first puzzle we're going to tackle today.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're breaking down the 4 big puzzles that every single organization has to wrestle with. First, the direction puzzle. How do you even know where you're going? Then, the motivation puzzle. How do you get people to want to go there with you? Third, the organization puzzle. How do you structure everybody to make the journey? And finally, the culture puzzle. What are the unwritten rules that keep the whole thing from imploding?
Okay, let's dive into puzzle number 1, the direction puzzle. This is all about steering the ship, right? Getting everyone rowing in the same direction. And to really solve this, you have to understand a distinction that so many people get wrong, and that is the difference between a manager and a leader. You might think those words are interchangeable. They're not. In fact, they're worlds apart.
Just look at this breakdown. It says it all. A manager has subordinates. People follow their instructions because, well, they have to. It's in the job description. Their authority comes from their title on an org chart. But a leader has followers, people who want to follow them, who are inspired by them. A leader's power isn't given to them by the company, it's earned, awarded by the people they lead. It's a totally different dynamic.
So, how does a manager actually make things happen? Well, they have this classic 5-function toolkit. It all starts with planning, which is really just setting the goals and figuring out the strategy. Then comes organizing, where you line up your resources and delegate the work. After that, you've got to coordinate, making sure all the different pieces are actually working together. Commanding is that day-to-day guidance and supervision, and finally, controlling. This is the feedback loop, where you measure how you're doing and correct course if you're drifting.
So, you've set a direction. Great. But how do you make people actually want to get there? What really gets them fired up to come to work every day? This brings us to puzzle number 2, the motivation puzzle. This one is all about getting inside people's heads and understanding what truly drives them.
Back in the 1960s, a social psychologist named Douglas McGregor laid out these 2 completely opposite ways of looking at people. Theory X is the pessimistic view. It basically says people are lazy, hate work, and you have to dangle a carrot or wield a stick to get them to do anything. On the flip side, you have Theory Y, the optimistic view. This says that work is actually a natural part of life, that people want to be creative and responsible, and are motivated by the pride of doing a great job. Which theory you believe in totally changes how you lead.
Building on this, Herzberg came up with an absolutely brilliant idea. He said there are 2 different sets of factors at play. First, you have hygiene factors, things like a decent salary or job security. Now, here's the catch. These things don't actually motivate you. But if they're missing, you'll be incredibly unhappy. Then you have the real motivators, things like feeling recognized, having responsibility, doing challenging work. Those are the things that actually make you want to perform better. So the big takeaway is this. Getting rid of what makes people dissatisfied is not the same thing as making them motivated. They are 2 completely different jobs.
And of course, you can't have a conversation about motivation without talking about Maslow's famous pyramid. The idea is simple, but it's so powerful. You have to build from the bottom up. You can't try to motivate someone with a cool new self-development project if they're worried about whether they'll have a job next month. You have to satisfy those basic, fundamental needs for things like safety and security before the higher-level stuff, like esteem and self-actualization, can even begin to work as motivators.
Okay, let's move on to our 3rd puzzle, organization. Let's say you've got a clear direction and a super motivated team. How do you actually arrange all those people so they can work together effectively? This is kind of like the architecture puzzle. How do you design the skeleton of the company itself?
At the heart of almost every traditional company is the chain of command. All it really does is answer 2 very simple but very important questions for every single employee. Who do I report to, and who reports to me? That's it. It's a simple structure designed to create clarity and make sure instructions flow smoothly from the top down.
But that simple chain isn't the whole story, is it? Companies organize in all sorts of ways. The most common is a functional structure. You put all the marketing people together, all the finance people together. The problem? You can get these silos where departments don't talk to each other.
So to fix that, some companies use matrix management, where you might report to two bosses, a project manager and your department head. Super flexible, but it can get confusing fast. And then you have modern teams, which are often set up to be self-sufficient, but really depend on having a strong leader to keep them on track.
And that brings us to our final puzzle. And honestly, this might be the most complicated one of all, because you can have the perfect direction, the most motivated people, and the slickest org chart on paper. But if you don't understand the culture, the unwritten rules of the game, the whole thing can still fall apart.
This model is just fantastic for showing how different these cultural norms can be. It basically breaks cultures down into three types. You have your logical, one-thing-at-a-time linear actives, then your emotional, relationship-focused multi-actives, and finally your respectful, harmony-seeking reactives. Now just imagine a negotiation with one person from each category. The direct, facts-first person from North America is going to seem so blunt and rude to the person from Asia who wants to build harmony first. It's a recipe for misunderstanding if you don't know what you're looking at.
Here's another huge cultural factor: power distance. It basically asks, how okay are we with inequality and hierarchy? In a low power distance culture, an employee feels totally fine challenging their boss's idea in a meeting. The vibe is more democratic. But in a high power distance culture, that would be a huge sign of disrespect. There's an expectation of a formal hierarchy, and you show deference to your superiors because of their age and position. A manager who misses this nuance is walking into a minefield.
So, direction, motivation, organization, and culture. 4 puzzles that are never really solved for good. They're just constantly being worked on, tweaked, and reevaluated. So as you go about your week, I want you to look around your own job and ask yourself, which one of these puzzles is my company trying to solve right now? The answer might just tell you everything you need to know about where you're all heading.